Hello lovelies, and welcome to the May 1995? Let's try that one again, Lesley. Hello lovelies, welcome to the May 2025 episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name's Lesley. This is a podcast about knitting, crochet, spinning, anything yarny or yarny adjacent, recorded on the south coast of the UK. And I'm going to sit myself a bit more comfortably. That's better. Hello. Hope everyone's well. Thank you for being here. Some of you may be new, in which case welcome for the first time. Some of you may have been here many times before, in which case welcome back. Thank you for being here. Much appreciate your company. I record throughout the month and then put everything together and post on the last weekend of the month. I'm possibly going to do things slightly differently this time. I was watching A Visit with Nana and Papa. That's Valerie and Jim. And if you're not watching them, I would suggest you do. Valerie is an incredibly talented and prolific and knowledgeable knitter. My goodness, there isn't much that lady doesn't know about anything knitting related. And her last podcast, or their last podcast, because Jim talks about movies, books, life, their experiences, so lots to listen to whilst you're crafting away. In their last one, Valerie went through one of the projects she was working on, and I found it fascinating to hear her thought process, the changes she was making along the way. So it sort of inspired me to do a bit more detail. I've got a couple of finished objects which I'll show you shortly, and I have a habit of just holding up a finished object saying I've made this and then telling you about it, but then you haven't really heard that much about the process that's gone into it, which I'm hoping will be of interest. So that's what I'm going to give it a go, and if you find it's not of interest, let me know. And if you find it is, let me know. Whatever it is, let me know. I love to hear from you. It's called the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast, despite the fact that I have a healthy stash, because I rarely buy enough of one colour or one type of yarn to make an entire garment. So I put a lot of things together, a lot of yarns together when I'm making things. And it had started as a bit of a joke at the knitting group I used to go to, that I'd put a block of colour in because I didn't have quite enough yarn to finish, and so it went on. We're running a make-along. This is the modification mal, and it's any pattern that you modify, and by modification I mean the stitch count, because you're working to a different gauge, for example, the silhouette of the item you're making, so it might be a longer leg on a sock, a different type of neckline on a sweater, different length of sweater, different shape of arm, different type of heel or toe on a sock. Whatever you're making, if you're modifying the overall shape of it, then that's also counting in this make along. Or if you change the stitch pattern, so if it's a stocking stitch pattern and you decide to do it in a rib or something like that, then that's a modification as well. If it's straight yarn substitution, so all of your numbers are the same effectively, that won't count as a modification in this particular make along. But if it changes stitch number, stitch pattern or silhouette, it's eligible. Entries are via Ravelry. There is a thread on the Not Quite Enough Yarn Ravelry group. If you're unable to use Ravelry, please email me. That's using notquiteenoughyarn@gmail.com, and I will add it to the Ravelry thread. I will pull a pattern prize every month, and then at the end of the make along, which will be on the 15th of October, which sounds an arbitrary date, but the idea is I can then announce it at the end of October and get prizes sent out, hopefully during November. I will announce 2 physical prizes, so there'll be yarn related prizes. I think that's it for the make along. I think that's it for the intro. Yes, I believe so. So let's get on to some finished objects. And the first is one that if you saw last month's podcast, you will have seen it mostly done. I was nearly finished. And this is my second sweater based on the Leaves Cascade by Anna D, but I was calling this the Leafless Cascade because I chose a different pattern. The original has a leaf design going down the centre panel. I went for something different. So I've used the numbers from the original pattern in terms of width, but I have made some modifications which I'll go through. So as you can see, it's a crochet sweater, a boxy shape, and it's a very simple design in its overall shape because it's essentially 2 rectangles and then 2... Is the plural of trapezium a trapezia? I don't know. 2 sleeves, and then you sew it together. So very straightforward. So modifications first of all. Firstly, I did some back neck shaping to raise the back a little, and I did that using longer stitches. So mostly these are in trebles, that's the UK terminology, so double crochet US terminology, but I put some longer stitches in across the back just to raise it slightly. I'm quite round shouldered and that just gave it a slightly better shape. I made longer sleeves and I made sure the sleeves were tapered. I don't like a loose sleeve, I like it fairly well fitted, so I did some shaping accordingly. I also made the whole sweater longer than the original pattern. The original is quite a cropped design. Whee, Brian, a cropped design, and I wanted something a bit longer. And probably the main difference is that stitch pattern. So I just went to a stitch dictionary and trying to find something white to put it against. That will hopefully show you. So just a simple pattern. Could be made completely plain, of course. Don't have to put a pattern in at all, but it gives a nice feature. I will put some photographs in of me wearing this because it's quite warm, so I don't need to wear it at the moment. But I have found that 4-ply or fingering weight yarn crocheted at this kind of gauge, and this is using a 4mm hook, and I can't remember the number of stitches per 4 inches, but I'll put that on screen. That works well as a sweater weight for me. It drapes in a way that I like, and it's not too hot, but it's warm enough to feel the benefit. Oh, sound like my mother. Put your coat on. Take your coat off when you go in, or you won't feel the benefit when you go out. So, sorry. So, yarns. There are many, as you can see. I was saying I don't have enough yarn. So the top and the sleeves are in Arctic Crafts Fine Merino Fingering in the Tidal Wave colourway. The next one, so this variegated here, is Third Vault Yarns Companion 4-ply in the Mycelium, I think that's how it's pronounced, colourway. The next one is Schoppelwolle Zauberball Crazy in colourway number 1511, U-Boot. Now unfortunately, and you'll see that in the photographs, the placement of that was a little unfortunate. I was just going from sort of darkish to lightish and trying to match the colours in a way that they would go together nicely. And because this has effectively put a dark stripe across the middle, it does look as if I'm wearing a sweater that's saying, and this is where my nipples should go, which is not something I would normally want to draw attention to, but it'll be fine, it'll be fine. Below that I have a couple of King Cole Anti-Tickle Merino Blend 4-ply, and these were leftovers from other projects. So this is the Petrol colourway and the Slate Blue. They're not showing up as hugely different on camera. They may well do by the time it comes through onto your screen, but they are, this is obviously more of a sort of darker teal, this is a blue. This royal blue sort of colour is Fonte BB Merinos, colourway 818. And then the final yarn is from Silly Little Sheep, and I don't know anything more than that. I know that's the maker. There was no colourway name on that. So it's just a selection of 4-ply fingering weight yarns, mostly sock style, so with a bit of nylon in, but some of them are pure merino, which may mean it pills. I'll have to see how that goes and get the gleaner out as necessary. I made the largest size, which is for an overall chest of 65 inches to give plenty of floatiness. And I used just over 1500 meters of yarn in total. So like I say, apart from the placement of that stripe, which had I realised it was going to land just where it does, I would have put it in a different place, but I'm not going to unpick it. I'm very pleased with it. I do love the colours. Some of these yarns are just right in my favourite colour, which is ridiculous for me to say because red is actually my favourite colour, but I am very fond of teals and turquoises, so yes, that's that done. A relatively quick project. I'm losing my R sounds today, aren't I? Crochet and crochet tend to be quicker than knitting for me. Again, it's quite a soft drapey gauge, so that's possibly a factor, and I'm very pleased with it. Hello lovelies. Done the first draw, so this is a pattern prize for people who've entered the modification mail, so thank you to everyone who's taken part, and these pattern draws are open to people who post a picture of what they're working on, but also who join in the conversation. And there were 27 entries on the thread. The first one was mine, so didn't include that. So did a random number generator between 2 and 27, and it picked out number 26, which is a post from MDoy Lima. I'll put it on here. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your intention on that. That is Maureen from Covington, Kentucky, and her post was part of a conversation. She'd previously posted a picture of a beautiful top she's made. Someone commented on that and she was answering their comments. So congratulations, Maureen, and thank you very much for taking part. If you'd like to get hold of me, either via Ravelry or email me notquiteenoughyarn@gmail.com. Let me know what pattern prize you'd like and I will get that to you. Thanks everyone. So that was the first FO, and the second is, unusually for me, a pair of socks. An unblocked pair of socks, as you'll see in a moment. I did some classic knitting logic because we've had some good weather here and my socks tend to be commercially bought, you know, machine made socks in dark colours. And being summer, I thought I'd either want some light coloured socks or some shorties. And I could have gone online or gone into a shop and probably bought about 3 or 4 pairs of trainer socks, no show socks, however you want to describe them, for very little money at all. But why would I do that when I can take a ball of very nice and probably very expensive hand-dyed yarn out of my stash and spend hours knitting some? Of course. So that's what I've done. As it happened, I had some medical appointments, and socks, as we know, are very handy portable projects. So I took them with me for the medical appointments and ended up in hospital. I'll do a health update at the end. So they were my on the ward project. But I have a pair of trainer socks, no show socks. These are the Skimmer socks. Where did I put the pattern? It's fallen on the floor. I'll get it in a sec. The Skimmer socks revisited by Sheila Toy Stromberg. This is a free pattern that you can get via Ravelry, and it's got a very large size range. I started off thinking I would make the largest size because I have larger than average feet, and so I thought, oh well, I'll just make the largest size. But actually looking at the stitch count, I didn't need to make the largest size. I made the one below, and in fact I probably could have used the one below that and still would have had it on with less ease. So a good size range from extra small to extra large, so quite a good range there. And you gain your sizing by measuring. There's a diagram of where to measure on the foot, and then it goes from there. So these are they. Toe up sock, Judy's Magic cast on toe up, work the toe, then, like I say, it's free pattern, so I'm not giving away anything you can't see for nothing. Put these stitches on a holder, work the foot, work the heel, and then pick up and do the rib. So these are they. I need to block them, but hopefully they will be a useful addition to the wardrobe. This pair used 44 grams of yarn altogether, and the yarn is, what have I done with the ball band? No, it's not that. Come along, play nicely. Ah. This was very kindly given to me by the lovely Brenda from Canada. Hello Brenda, how are you, my lovely? We met, she was in London, and we met along with Natalie Warner, brilliant designer and sewer and all-round talented people. I am very fortunate that I am able to spend my time watching people like Valerie, meeting people like Natalie and Brenda, who are very talented and in many ways make me feel quite inadequate because they are very talented, but my goodness, I learn a lot from them. And if I'm feeling inadequate, that's a me problem, you know, that's for me to deal with. But gosh, being with people who are really talented at what they do and have a real passion for what they do, it is such a privilege. And just, yeah, I feel very lucky to be able to do that. But in addition to the luck of meeting Brenda, she very kindly gave me this yarn, and this is by Songbird Yarn and Fibres, and it's in the American Kestrel colourway, and there's a bit of information about the American Kestrel. It's an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon fingering weight yarn, and is absolutely lovely. Feels great, as you would imagine, with an 80% merino, but the 20% nylon should keep it holding up nicely. And I'm very delighted to have been able to use it for these socks. I will, I'm sure, use this pattern again. What I would possibly do, and this is because of the type of shoes that I wear, if I wanted to go sockless in what I would call court type shoes, so shoes where you have this much of your toe or your foot on show, these are perfect. I tend to wear shoes which are more like a sort of straight trainer, slip-on Skechers type shoe. So I would make these again, and I would possibly make the toe a little more, go a little further, and have a smaller piece for my foot to go into. So it would be more like a conventional sock in that respect, but still doing that slight lift on the back heel and having the rib just here, but it's sort of halfway up the foot rather than an ankle if it was a shorty sock. Did that make any sense at all? I hope so, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. But yes, a pair of socks. I'm not a prolific sock knitter. Like I say, I tend to wear commercial machine-made socks, and I prefer those for general walking about. But I thought these would be a nice addition to my summer wardrobe. And so they are. Hello, lovelies. I have lots of lovely things to show you. I'm going to start with gifts. I got this through the post from the lovely Brenda. Now, I mentioned Brenda earlier when I was talking about the skimmer socks, because she was the one who kindly gave me the yarn that I used for those. And I opened this up, stitching, and I thought, okay, knitted bliss stitching. I thought, okay, I've done a bit of embroidery in the past, so if she's given me a kit to do, then that's very kind. What's even kinder is that she'd done it. So what I've got is this beautiful picture that I don't have to do any work for. So thank you, Brenda. Fully finished, felt on the back, all the lovely things. So I just need to find somewhere to put it. And I'm looking around the room to think where it can go, but isn't that just wonderful? So thank you, Brenda. Beautiful. And you are very, very kind. Oh, lovely. Now, himself has started his travelling. During the summer, he's often away, usually to do with sport, or when his team won the FA Cup. That is a big deal. He's a supporter of Crystal Palace Football Club, who, for the first time in their 100 and something year history, 125 years I think, won some silverware. They won the FA Cup. He was there, he was at Wembley, or Wembley as I insist on calling it, and we're a few days on, he's still in shock. He can't believe that Palace have won, well, anything frankly. So, very happy boy. But before then, he went away to watch our nephew play some golf, and he went to a shop, and I can't remember what the shop was called. It doesn't say on here, so I'm sorry. But he did get me a few things. So he got me a coaster. If I'm sitting, I'm knitting. Fair enough. About right. And then he got me some yarn, because he is a very kind man. So these are all Knit Pro Symphony Viva, and they are DK, 100% merino, in some beautiful colours. Now the sun is coming in, so this is looking a little brighter on the camera screen than it does in real life, but it is a beautiful kind of cerise colour. Does it have a name? Pink Mauve, that seems fair enough. This one is called Purple Fuchsia, again well named, and again a little darker. We've got the sun coming in. And this one is Jodhpur Blue. So some lovely yarns here, which I shall find something gorgeous to do with. Was that a sentence? Near enough. Hopefully you understand what I mean. So that is extremely kind of him. He is off again this week, but not somewhere where he expects to buy yarn. He's going to watch some cricket. And I'm not a fan of cricket. I'm not a fan of most sports, but cricket is particularly, well, tedious, frankly. But he's going to watch the test match, and that will make him very happy. But he's unlikely to buy yarn. But I said last month that I was hoping to go to a very small yarn festival in Eastbourne, which is about 15 miles along the coast that way. Or is it that way? Anyway. I will put footage at the end of my trip there, and I'll put it at the end because it includes some of my train journey, and I know some folks are sensitive to movement when they see it on screen. So I'll put that at the end, and then if that's not for you, that's fine. It's a very, very small festival. I went round it in about 25 minutes. It's a fibre festival, so it does fibre as in spinning fibre. It does anything that's textile related. So there were folks there with trimmings, braids, that kind of thing for sale. There were folks with textile art. There were folks with craft books. There were folks with jewellery made of bits of textile. Some lovely felted bowls and hats that were rather stylish. But it is a tiny venue. It's an old railway shed that is called the Enterprise Centre, and it has a lot of small shops in it, small independent shops. And then upstairs it has this sort of display space where you can have a booth for this type of show. So it doesn't take long to go around, but it's very friendly, good fun, nice people there. You can have a chat, and you can buy things. So I did. In terms of yarn, I went to, hang on, I've lost a skein. Sailing Soul. It was in my hand a minute ago. So I bought 2 skeins of yarn from Folkestone Harbour Yarn, and they had a rack with full-size skeins of yarn. They also had a lot of minis, and she did this lovely thing where you could either choose your own or have a pre-selected one, but then these minis were wrapped up like a bouquet of flowers, which was rather sweet. Interestingly, I picked up 2 and then put them back because I thought, no, I don't need that. That's similar to what I've had recently. So the first one was black with like patches of colour, and I thought, no, I don't need that at the moment. Lovely, but I don't need it. Then there were quite a few colours in the blue sort of area of the colour wheel, and I went towards this variegated blue, and I thought, I have just finished a blue crochet sweater, so I don't need that. And I found these lovely colours instead. So we have this pretty much solid in lilac. So this is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 425 meters per 100 grams. Yep, that's that. And that's not a bad representation. Again, a little bright because of the sun, but not too bad. And I also was rather taken with this beauty. Now, if you imagine this just a little bit darker, more of a sort of damson, it is called oh, I can't read the writing. Frankenskier's Arctic Seafarer. Again, 75-25, 425 metres per 100 grams, and rather lovely. And I thought these two I could put together, or I could use separately, depending on where the inspiration leads. Oh, how we laugh when we say inspiration, but you know, hope springs. So that was the yarn that I bought. There was also someone who does a lot of natural dyeing, and there was another stall there where someone was selling her patterns. She had shawl patterns, sort of single skein patterns, and the yarn to go with. That tended to be yarn manufacturers like Araucania, those sorts of brands. So not the independent hand dyed, but not the big kind of commercial, the kind of in between. I'm not sure how those companies are categorised. Do we need to label everyone? But it helps to understand what we're talking about. So yes, it took me about half an hour to go round, so I was back home fairly early, which kind of suited because I do tire very easily still. And you know, I was carrying some stuff because, as well as those 2 skeins of yarn, I bought some fibre. As promised, I went to see Briarbank Rainbows, and I did ask if they have an online presence, and the lady whose name escapes me, sorry, said that they don't, because the stock is very much dyed, I was going to say on a whim, but she doesn't dye, she doesn't have specific colourways that she would then reproduce. She dyes according to what yarn's available, what fibres, sorry, not yarn, what fibres available, and where her inspiration lies. So it's not easy for her to have an online shop or an online presence, because the turnover would be too quick. It would be a full-time job just to keep that up to date. But she did give me her card with her phone number, so if I want to order stuff I can ring her up and say, you got any more of this, love? Which I won't. But I was wearing the sweater that I finished last month, the cream one with the hand dyed, and I said, this is yours, this is what I bought last year. And she was pleased with that. Or if not, she was doing a good impersonation of someone pleased with that. So that was good enough for me. So I bought some more of the same. So the braids that I spun to make that that yarn that went into the particular sweater are these Falkland Merino braids. I've got 4 different ones here. So they're kind of rainbowy, but some don't have the full range of colours, but they have beautiful colours within them. So I got these, and then I can't remember what fibre this is, but it's very pretty. It's not as soft as the Falklands Merino, and I wish I'd asked, but it is very pretty. I mean, fabulous colours in there, a pastel rainbow basically, and rather lovely. So I got that, and then they had other fibre that they were selling by the gram or by the 100 gram. And they had some undyed and some sort of natural greys and that sort of thing. So I just got a couple of 100 grams of merino undyed to ply with other things. So that was a fun time. Don't know about had by all, but certainly had by me. So yes, those are my acquisitions. This podcast started for 2 reasons. Firstly, I had a friend who was in hospital and I thought it would entertain her. And secondly, I was going to work down my stash. We know, people who've been here a long time, that whenever I say I'm going to reduce my stash, it gets bigger. So I'm now taking the opposite approach, and I've bought yarn, and I'm encouraging himself to buy me yarn in the hope that it will reduce my stash. I know it's counterintuitive, but nothing else is logical, so let's give it a go. Not that I'm worried about having a big stash, because it's nice to have. It's not for everyone, I know, and other people have a stash that's much bigger than mine. It's very much a personal thing, but yes, I'm not sorry to increase it. I'm only sorry when I'm trying to find storage room for it. But oh dear, what a terrible problem to have. So those are my acquisitions, and I will be back later with some of the works in progress. Cheers. Hello lovelies. It occurs to me that it probably looks as if I'm wearing the same t-shirt whenever I talk to you. I do have an unusually large collection of blue t-shirts. I mean, yeah, I've washed them and, you know, rotate the laundry pretty quickly as well. But I do put a clean one on every morning. Scout's honour and everything. But I digress. That's not what I've come on here for. I don't need to justify myself. Well, maybe. I have another small finished object. Those of you who saw last month's podcast saw that I had a new chair, a grey one, and so I made a big red throw to go over it because I'm likely to spill things down it. Okay. We then had a bit of a change around of furniture in our sitting room, and the chair that himself used to have has moved into another room and was looking a bit sad. It needed a bit of... Well, we needed to make sure the chair he now has doesn't go the same way. Basically, just it's a fabric rather than a leather or any kind of non-porous material. And the chair back just looks a bit grubby, frankly. Don't like to use that word about my husband, but sometimes you have to. So I thought I would make, to use the old-fashioned term, an antimacassar. I love the word antimacassar. I don't know why. So yes, a cover for the chair back. So named because it was to protect furniture from the macassar hair oil that folks, I think mostly gentlemen, used to put on their hair and used to go all over the backs of the chairs. So this is an anti-macassar. I love stuff like that, but that's just me. So I used some of the same yarn. I had that cone of very fine yarn that I'd put in the throw as well. And I realised I had miscalculated last month's yarn usage because I said that throw used about 11,000 metres. It hadn't. It was about 8,000 when I recalculated it properly. Still more than I'd want to walk in a day, to be honest, but not quite as much as it seemed. But, you know. So I took the rest of the yarn off the cone and took it as an opportunity to practice my chain plying on the wheel. So chain plied the yarn because it was a very fine, it was a 2-ply, very fine gauge, and made it about the equivalent of a double knitting weight yarn. Grabbed a size 4mm crochet hook, did a load of foundation trebles, UK terms, and then just started working straight. I was working on this for a while, and I was working on this when I was on a Zoom call with a friend of mine. And I was lamenting my lack of patience on most things, particularly anything that I'm doing, or with myself generally. And my friend said, yes, but look at what you're doing, that requires patience. And I said, yes, but I have changed the pattern halfway through. So I'd started with plain trebles, and then I put in, let's try and get some light behind it to show you the pattern. And I just changed it to a shell pattern just to make it more interesting to work. Then I took the shells out again and thought it was long enough. I then went around the edges with a shell pattern as well, just to finish it off nicely and to give it a bit of width, because when I'd put the shell pattern in, it had taken it a little bit narrower than just the straight trebles. So the overall size of this is 34.5 inches by 17.5 inches. Wanted it quite long because we wanted most of it to kind of tuck down behind the cushion so that himself's head will be against this bit and all of this will tuck down the back so that it doesn't fall down, because I did make a woven piece a long time ago, but it was far too small and it never stayed in place, so that's why we've gone for a longer piece this time. I used well, it was actually 1,600 meters of yarn, but that's because it was chain plied. So divide that by 3 and you'll have closer to the amount of yarn. Had I been using just a regular DK, it would have been 1,600 divided by 3, which is just over 500 meters, 530 something. God, I did that with my head and everything. I feel the need to check it now. Oh, 533. Yes, my maths worked. Yay. So that's another little finished item. There is a little bit of that red left. I could have gone longer, but I was getting very bored by this point. So I don't know what that will go in. Probably another project, a scrap project or something like that. There we go. Cheers. Hello, lovelies. Beautiful day here today. You may hear bird song because I've got the door open, let the fresh air in. Like many other people, I downloaded the Merlin app onto my phone, which identifies bird song. and it identified a Eurasian wren, a herring gull, and a German washing machine, because that was also going at the same time. I digress. I have a project to show you which I started last month, but I don't think I've talked about it yet. And this is a sweater for my sister Bev, who is often on this channel, whether I want her to be or not. No, I'm joking. She loves a sweater, she loves a cable, and she's been very helpful to me, so I wanted to say a little thank you and make her something. When the lovely Karen from Recreational Knitting sent me a huge quantity of yarn, thank you again, Karen, one of the colours I just immediately thought that would look great on Bev, and it's this colour here. She's a lovely turquoise teal sort of area, really nice colour. This is the Yarnsmith's Create DK from Wool Warehouse, acrylic, double knitting weight, got a nice feel to it, good stitch definition, very happy with how it's knitting up. So thank you again, Karen. Now I'm sure you will watch, Karen. If you don't, then maybe you should reconsider some life choices. If you're interested in the ranunculus sweater, she did a podcast recently just focusing on the ranunculus and her experience of making a couple of them, more than a couple, and her thoughts on the pattern. So I will link below that particular episode because it is very informative and very thought-provoking in a very good way. Lots of berries in that sentence, but it was very good. So yeah, like I say, I'll link that below if you're interested in the ranunculus. I mean, she makes lots of stuff, but that was a particular focus and was a good thing to watch. So yes, Bev, what was I saying? Yes, Bev, sister, older than me, feel the need to say that. She likes a cable, and I have made her some sweaters in the past, but over recent years she's lost weight, and some of them are a bit big and baggy, don't fit her as well as she would like them to, so I thought I'd make her a new one. I'm not sure why I've got a stitch marker there. I'm going to leave it just in case there is a reason. Strange. So I asked her to bring along a sweater that she liked the fit of, and I took lots of measurements, and I'm making a sweater to match that. And she said, if anything, go on the slightly smaller side. You know, if I had to choose between two sizes, go smaller rather than larger, because she doesn't like them particularly baggy, whereas I wear very loose fitting clothes. She prefers things that are a bit more fitted. And also, as an acrylic yarn, it will probably give a little as it's washed and worn, so another reason to go slightly smaller. The sweater that she gave me to measure was a saddle shoulder sweater, and I thought, I'll make one of those. And I have in my collection Anne Budd's Knitter's Handy Book of Top-Down Sweaters. I have a few Anne Budd books. There's the General Knitting Patterns, which has got a sweater, but it's also got hats, gloves, mitts, sleeveless top, that kind of thing. There's the Book of Sweater Patterns, which is the bottom-up version of this, effectively. And this one. Now, she's also got sock books. Oh, there's socks in the General Sweater Patterns book, Knitting Patterns book as well. And the idea is that you do a gauge swatch. Sorry to use bad language there, but you have to know your tension. And then basically there are the numbers for the sweaters. So she's got all the measurements, and there are just charts, and it tells you how many stitches to cast on, how many rows to work, and so forth. And she's got it for several different types of sweater. So we've got the saddle shoulder, which is the one I'm doing, set-in sleeve, raglan, and a seamless yoke in this book. The bottom up has also got drop shoulder and modified drop shoulder. So very useful. Now, I used to use this a lot, and then as I grew outside of the top range of this. Normally, when I've had sweaters that I've grown out of, or patterns that I've grown out of, I have got rid of the books because I'm not going to use them anymore. But this one, because it includes children's sizes as well, it's a useful book as a guide to general knitting patterns. And I've always said that with one of these and a stitch dictionary or directory, you could make an almost infinite number of garments, because the varieties would be huge in number, more than one could knit in a lifetime. So I've taken the numbers from this, compared it to the measurements of Bev's sweater, and have started. Because she likes a cable, my idea was to find a cable pattern and to work that down the saddle of the shoulder and then work it down the sleeve. And the cable that I found, I also have lots of stitch directories because I like those as well. And this is from one of the Barbara Walkers, I think it's the third, and it's the Gothic Lattice pattern, which is in that crossover between a cable and a twisted stitch, because I think it comes under the twisted stitch section of the book, but to me that's a cable. But that's because I use cable needles. I've never really got into cabling without a needle. I think I'm just too nervous and too slow. So I use a cable needle, which is, you know, we all knit the way we want to knit. So I partly chose this pattern because it would fit into the number of stitches for the saddle. I mean, I like it as well. I wouldn't choose something I thought was unpleasant, but it fitted nicely into the number of stitches that I wanted for the saddle on Bev's sweater. So here we have the start. So you start off making the saddles, then you pick up, knit down the front, knit down the back, possibly not in that order, and then join up, work down, pick up the sleeves, work down. I thought, which is rare in itself, I thought about this as I went along, which is why we have cables on a backdrop of reverse stocking stitch, which is as one would expect, against stocking stitch, right side, for the sweater. And I was only one row into having joined, and I thought this is going to get boring. So I thought I need to do something to incorporate this pattern, or a cable pattern, on the body as well. Not just have it as a panel down the sleeves. That would look very nice, but in terms of me knitting it, I would want something with a bit more variety than that. But what I didn't want to do was then suddenly go from stocking stitch to reverse stocking stitch just as a block. I thought that would look very much as if I'd changed my mind as I went along. So the fact that's what I've done is irrelevant. We don't want people to know that. Well, you and I can know, that's fine. So what I did was work out how many stitches I had, and then using the number in the pattern repeat, I'm starting to build up the reverse stocking stitch. So we're starting off with 2 rows of reverse stocking stitch per repeat, then it'll be 4, then it'll be 6, and then it'll be 8, which is what I want for the pattern. And then I'll start doing the cable pattern into that. So it just gives it more of a gradient from right side stocking stitch to reverse stocking stitch. I hope that makes sense. And then I'll incorporate the cable pattern into that. If I really don't like the look of it, I will unpick it and start again. I didn't want to unpick and do the whole lot of this in reverse stocking stitch, even though I feel it would probably look better if I did. But I'm looking to see how this goes. And Bev won't mind. She's very accommodating. So I will let you know how that goes as we go along. I've only just started that transition, so you can see I've got a few, almost looks like a slightly wonky rib at the moment. There's only a few rows of it. But hopefully we'll have a sort of 10-row transition from one type of stitch to the other, and then the cable pattern can follow from there. That's the hope. Wish me luck. Hello lovelies. I've done some more work on my sister's sweater, and when I last showed you it, I was just changing the stitch pattern from stocking stitch to the cable pattern that I'm using, which is a Barbara Walker pattern. It's the lattice cable, Gothic Lattice. Yes, Gothic Lattice. And I was trying to do it as a sort of gradual movement from one stitch pattern into the other rather than a straight line. And I think it's worked. I was wondering at one point if I should have done these as kind of longer points down to the transition, but they do match the changes in the pattern on the Gothic lattice pattern itself, so I think it works. When I block this, it will hopefully flatten that out a bit. This is acrylic yarn, so it'll go a little bit loose, I would guess. So yes, here we are. So I've got another, I think it's about another 5 inches of body before I do the welt for the waistband. So I should put a little stitch marker in here so that I can record where I'm at. I'm seeing my sister in the early to middle of next month, so you might see her too at the end of next month. Sorry, I just do that to wind her up. So whereas I normally work on this for a day and then something else for a day and then something else and something else, I've been concentrating on this because I'd quite like her to take it home with her. She's here for a week, so I haven't got it finished by the time she arrives. Hopefully it'll be finished by the time she goes. If not, I'll make her stay. No, I won't do that. But I'm pretty pleased with how that's coming out. The stitch definition on this yarn, which is the Yarnsmith's Create DK from Wool Warehouse, is coming out very nicely. I'm pleased with how that's showing. So you'll see this again next month, and with a bit of luck you'll see it finished. Cheers. I've had an idea for a very long time that I've never got round to making, and I felt like doing it. The idea was stained glass. Now, although I am not a religious person, I did grow up very close to this place. Had school commemoration services there every year. This is Canterbury Cathedral, by the way. And I love churches, stained glass windows, all of that. A school trip to France when I was about 12. I remember we went to Chartres Cathedral. Probably mispronouncing that, but it's gorgeous. And I remember 2 things about Chartres. One being the fabulous stained glass window. I'll try and find a picture and put it in here. And the other was some absolutely delicious lemon ice cream, which I'd never had lemon ice cream before. Not lemon sorbet, which is also a fine and dandy thing, but this was lemon ice cream, and it was a taste you remember from childhood. I remember it now. So yes, memories of Chartres. The blue and the yellow of the stained glass window and the lemon ice cream. I digress. So I've always had a bit of a thing for stained glass, and many years ago I designed a mitten and hat pattern for Let's Knit magazine. I'll put a picture in here. And the idea behind these, well, they were a bit of a stash buster. So a bit of easy colour work, double knitting weight, nothing too complicated, but the colour, so you've got the black as your main colour, and then all the other colours were a magic ball. It was an idea to use up ends and oddments, sew all the pieces together, rush and join them or what have you, and then use them as your contrast colour to give that kind of mixed colour for the stained glass effect. Now there is a sleeveless sweater pattern which I've seen for years, and I'll try and find it and put it in here, which is gorgeous, but it's nowhere near my size, so not going for that. Like I say, I've had this idea for a long time, and then year before last, when I did what I thought was a confectionery swap with the lovely Megan in New Zealand, but she'd also sent yarn as well, which I didn't realise. I hadn't done anything with that yarn, but it was always in my head to use it for a stained glass kind of pattern. So I've caked it all up, we're ready to go. I picked up a picture from the internet. Now this is my chart for the back of the sweater, and as I said to himself yesterday, I may have overcomplicated things a bit. I must be going through a strange period of my life that I think this is a good idea. But I'm taking the view that this will be a long-term project. I'm not going to work on it every day. It's just once a week or so I'll pick it up and work on it, so I don't get sick of it. I don't get bogged down in it. I can just put it down and then pick it up again. That's the theory. So first of all, I did a swatch. And this swatch is still on a stitch holder because this will actually be a pocket lining. I'm going to put pockets into this, and I need to make another one of these, and it will be the pocket lining. So I thought, nothing lost, use it as my swatch, but also use it in the garment. Did that to find what gauge I had on a fabric that I liked, and this is using Drops Flora for the black, and then, like I say, Megan's Advent for the coloured yarns. This was just some other 4-ply that was in the stash. Having found my gauge, I then went searching for a pattern, and I came across this, which is by Kim McBrien Evans, and this is the Serotonin cardigan or jacket. This does have pockets in, and this has pockets in the side seams. I'm not going to do mine that way. I'm going to do the pockets where you have just a slit and your hand goes in that way. But I like this as a shape. It's got set-in sleeves, and the gauge was right, and it goes up to my size. I vote that a win. It's actually part of a book with 3 patterns in, but this is the one that I'm working on for this. I am making a few modifications. Mainly I'm not doing this stripe pattern, which is listed in a lot of detail, which is good, if you wanted to follow it. Also, there's some shaping, some waist shaping, which I'm not going to do. But I'm going to follow it basically for the numbers, although I have altered it very slightly, but very slightly. It's worked bottom up, and so the idea is that I will have this pattern going up the body, possibly into where the sleeves are. It depends kind of how long this takes, how long this is, and then the shoulders will be plain. So I've started. I haven't got all of the black yarn with me, but here are all the lovely colours. So lots to play with there. And I have started. So this is the beginning of the back. And this is as far as I've got so far, which is fine. That's all I need right now. So I worked on this, I'd done the ribbing before, but I worked on this yesterday. So I got, I think it was 13 rows done in a couple of hours yesterday. It's stranded, but it's not the usual stranded. Because I've got these columns, I didn't want to do intarsia. I don't get on with intarsia. I find the yarn management's a bit too much for me. Even though I use little bobbins and things, I find I get myself in a bit of a tangle and rather cross. But I also, knowing that I had quite large areas to cover and these straight lines, I didn't want to do regular stranded and have everything showing through. So what I've done is the ladder back technique. So you actually create a spare fabric effectively that you use to carry the colours, and it means that it doesn't show through. You can see a few stitches just on the row you're working, but they will sit at the back of the work as you work up. And it wasn't as fiddly as I feared it might be. I have used it before on a much smaller project, and I had to remind myself by watching YouTube videos of how to do it and how to start it up. And I'd forgotten that when you're working, so in this case this is a blue section, but I need to carry the black, sorry. So you knit the blue stitches, then you bring the blue yarn forward, work the black, blue yarn back, and then carry on. And I thought, oh, that's going to get on my nerves, but it hasn't done. It was okay. It's slower than just ploughing through with stocking stitch, as you would expect, but not to the point where it's going to drive you insane. I did have a few occasions, in fact I've just spotted another one, where I forgot to put the yarn back, and so the stitch shows through, but in which case you can just drop it down, unhook it from the stitch in the front, and then pick it up again with a crochet hook. So that's easily rectified. So it's going to be a slow, long project, but this is where we are so far. And it's not as slow to work as I feared, so I'm hopeful that that I might have it by next winter, with a bit of luck. I've been doing more work on the stained glass effect sweater, and mostly have discovered that I can't make charts for love nor money, because here is my initial chart, and I have written all over it, use a separate page, little rings where there are errors. I know it's a lot in a small space, but there are a lot of errors, and the problem is with this particular pattern is you'd make one section and then you'd copy and paste it, so if it's wrong in the first one, it's wrong in every one. So I'm on to the second incarnation of this chart, because it was getting so ridiculous that I thought I really need to redo. And I've already found some more errors up here. I'm not even here for knitting yet, but I looked at it and I thought, that's not right, and it's not. Hey ho. So I have now corrected it on my computer. There is the corrected version of this, so that if I need to print a third, which would not be a surprise, I can do so. It's not like me to overcomplicate anything, is it? But how is the actual knitting going? Well, not bad, and to be honest, quicker than I expected. I'm holding this upside down because the rib is flipping up and it will cover most of the work otherwise. But it's coming together. I'm on the 4th mini. The first one was 10 grams, the others so far are 20. This batch of minis that I was very kindly sent by Megan, thank you Megan, hope all is well. Some were 10, some were 20 grams. So it's great because it's then giving different widths of the stripe as this works through the colours. So that's all good, and I've had a quick workout and I think I should be okay for colours. There are a couple of very dark colours in the advent that she gave me, and they won't contrast very well with the black, so I don't think I'm going to need them, and that's great because they will rather be lost, I think. So yeah, we're coming along okay. As you can see, I'm starting to put some of the tracery work in from the stained glass. What I've been doing is, it's mostly the ladder back, I couldn't think of the name, mostly the ladder back style of stranding, but where I have colour work with smaller pieces, I've stopped the ladder back and used regular stranded techniques. I'm not the neatest of colour work knitters, I would say, looking at my floats, but I don't want people looking at my floats. I want people looking at the other side once it's finished, so I'm not going to worry too much. I haven't done a huge amount of colour work, stranded colour work during my knitting life. When I first did some, and I think I think my grandmother had taught me, there's always this question about how often do you catch floats when working in different colours. And I was taught, and I can only assume it was by her, but I don't remember the lesson as such, that it was every 2 or 3 stitches. So I had always found colour work quite a faff because of catching the floats very regularly, and also the danger of them showing through. I felt I wasn't very good at colour work, so I didn't tend to do it. But watching other knitters, other podcasters looking at patterns, I realised that 2 to 3 stitches is quite frequent, and some don't catch any floats at all, some are very variable. So what I've been doing is I've set myself a sort of maximum here of 6 stitches between catching floats. So on some of these pieces, in those lines in the middle where you've got just the glass colour, for want of a better phrase, then that's caught every 6 stitches or so. But if there's 6 stitches of contrast, I'm just holding the float behind it. It seems to be working. As I'm going along the row, after each little section, I'm sort of pulling on the in my case, right-hand needle. I'm right-handed, so this is the one I knit onto, and I am pulling, just gently stretching it out so that the floats are being given their full space and not too crunched up, and therefore taking yarn into the next section when I actually need it in the one I've just worked. That was a tip from Skein, who of course is well known for colour work and colour work designs, so I felt that was a good person to take colour work advice from. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's going quicker than I thought it would. I felt that this would be a very, very slow project, and it is slower to knit because you're pausing to move the yarn for the ladder backs or catch the floats where it's stranded. But because there's so much repetition, because I can show you this because it's my chart, so the middle column is a little wider and the two end columns are narrower, but you've basically got four identical columns. They'll be different in height, but in terms of working along the row, four identical columns, so you get into a rhythm of it fairly quickly. I've put a couple of stitch markers around my central wider column so that I don't try and do the same pattern and then wonder why I have too many stitches left. It happens. It has happened despite the stitch markers, but at least they are there as a bit of a guide. But as for the rest, it's coming along. Now it does go wrong, I do make lots of mistakes, but because they're in small sections, I can normally see fairly quickly where I'm going wrong, so I've only got to unpick a dozen stitches rather than a dozen rows or more. So it's slower than just going round and round in stocking stitch, as you would expect, but it's not so slow and touching lots of wood and crossing lots of fingers. I haven't yet reached a point where I feel I need to unpick a lot, because I would cry. There have been a couple of times where I've noticed I haven't caught the ladder backs terribly well and I can see them slightly showing through. I'm not going back. Once I'd started the stranded bit, I thought I am not dropping that down. It's not showing enough for me to worry about it. What it has taught me is that before I sort of fasten off the ladder backs, because I'm about to start a stranded bit, just have a quick look at the section, make sure there's nothing that needs dropping down and picking up before I seal that off, if you like, just to make it easier for myself if there is a problem. So this is the back of my cardigan, which seems to be a bit caught. Hang on a sec. Oh, I use a row counter all the time when I'm knitting, and I normally, rather than have it sticking on a needle as they're initially designed to do, because I usually work on circular needles, I hang a bit of old spare yarn on it and have it hanging from there. The amount of times it gets yarn caught around it, there must be a better way. I'm sure there is. I know you can buy them with like plastic holders, but I'm sure they would be the same for getting yarn caught around them. But anyway, here we are. So the ribbing is as per the pattern. It is flipping up a little. I'm hoping that blocking will solve that, or that it will be less of an issue once I've got more on here. So even if it does flip up, I won't feel like it's covering all of my hard work. This is where we are. We've done the first of these, in most cases 4 pattern repeats, and I'll just keep plodding on. I've charted out for the fronts of the cardigan. I will need to reprint that because these errors need to be taken out of that. I haven't charted out for the sleeves. I was partly waiting to see what yarns I had left from the advents, although I have other yarns I can use, so there'll probably be a slightly different colour palette but in the same vibe. And I will do that. I mean, that's a happy couple of hours sitting at my laptop planning that out, but I just wanted to get cracking on this, so I did. So there's my stained glass so far. I will put a stitch marker on it so that when you next see it we can see how far I'm going, but I'm pleased with how it's coming. It will benefit from blocking. It is a little bit all colour worked, you know, it never looks nice before it's blocked, I find, so it will benefit from blocking, but I'm quite pleased with how it's turning out so far, so fingers crossed that will remain the same. Cheers. Now, as I said earlier, the lovely Valerie really talked us through her process when she was putting together a garment that she was designing herself, using another pattern as the basis for sort of starting off numbers, but then doing her own thing because she had a clear vision of where she wanted to go with it. And I don't have those lofty ambitions in terms of what I'm making at the moment, but I did like hearing about her process and how it changed and the situation she came up with and how she dealt with them. So I thought that would be a good way to do this, and hopefully you'll agree. I have started another crochet sweater project. As I said when I was talking about the leaves cascade, that sort of gauge suits me for wearing. So I looked for other patterns with that gauge and I found this one. Now this is a printed pattern in black and white, and it's the Drops Viola. So I'll find the pattern, put the project pattern or the designer pattern and put it in here so you can get a better view. Free pattern available on the Drops site, and the gauge matches the leaf cascade, so that was what I was going with. I started this, put it down for a couple of days while I was working on something else, went back to it and thought, why have I got all these markers on here? Why is this sweater wearing so much jewellery? And I've put more on since then. This pattern, it's a really nice looking sweater. I'm looking forward to owning the sweater. Drops patterns are very dense. Now you have to excuse my markings and everything all over this, but I have been known to comment / complain in the past that I've gone to print out a pattern and it's been like 30 pages or something. You won't get that with the Drops pattern because it is incredibly dense. Again, it's a free pattern, so I'm not showing you anything you can't see for yourself, but this is all text. It is very dense. Because it's covering all the sizes, these are the instructions, all a lot of text, and also a number of charts. So this is a charted pattern. If you're not used to crochet charts, this is actually a good way to do it. Personally, I quite like charts. I find them relatively straightforward to follow, but a lot of patterns will offer you both. This doesn't. One thing I would say is, as with all crochet patterns, check if they're in the instructions that you're used to. Now in my case, I'm used to UK English instructions. This is in American instructions. Absolutely fine, as long as you know that you can work accordingly. But also, do make sure you check the diagram explanations, because I was looking at the diagram and I've used charts quite often and, you know, sometimes drawn my own, and I thought, I don't think that's the symbol that I would use for that stitch. So on looking at the diagram, it is different to the charting that I'm used to. Again, once you know that, you can work with it and it's fine. But I looked at that thinking these were what would be treble stitches in UK terms, and actually they are double trebles. I tell a lie, this is UK terms, apologies. They are double trebles. But I would look at those charts, those symbols, and say they're trebles. So do check that out. It's one of those things, it's easy to think you know what it means and then find it doesn't. So just worth double checking. Now the reason why I have so much jewellery on this and so many stitch markers is because of the way the pattern is constructed. Because you have a number of charts, so you have three here which are for the sleeves. So you've got increase, depending on your size, you've got another increase here, or it tells you at what point to stop working for your size and then just work straight. And then the other increase for the other side of the sleeve. You've got these which I've scribbled through because they're not applicable for the size I'm working. And then you've got these, and I've actually written down here which order I need to do these in. So the sleeves are 1, 2 and 3, that's easy. For the body, for my size, I've got to do chart 4 over 4 stitches, then 5, then 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 4 again. So it's just having that as a kind of handy reference guide. So I found it easiest to put stitch markers at the end of each chart. And in the same way that when you're doing a pattern repeat, particularly a complicated one, whether it's knitting or crochet, it can be a good idea to put stitch markers between each repeat just to help you keep on track. I found this helped me with this. Now of course the difference between crochet and knitting, when you're putting stitch markers in, knitting you put them on the needle and it hangs between two stitches. So on that side of the marker it's the previous repeat, this side of the marker it's the new repeat, the next section. With crochet you don't have that gap, you have one stitch hooking into the next. So I've also got a little note on here saying markers on the first of the new block, because again I'd looked at it and thinking, well, is that the last stitch of the chart or is it the first? So it's just making these notes for yourself if your memory is like mine. Just saves you time looking at it thinking, where was I? What was I doing? What is this crochet thing? So that's kind of where we're at with that at the moment. It's going to be another sweater with different colours. This first yarn is more of the King Cole anti-tickle merino blend. It's called merino blend, but it's 100% merino, 4-ply. It's a very good, useful yarn, I find. You can get it in 500 gram cones for a very reasonable price. I mean, a 500 gram cone of this isn't that much more than a 100 gram cone of hand-dyed yarn. Rightly so, because this is commercially produced. It's not someone sitting there planning colourways in the same way and the manual labour involved in hand-dyed yarn. But it does make it a very good workhorse plain yarn to put then with hand-dyeds and to give you a nice sort of plain background. So that's the King Cole. It's actually unpicked from a project that I was working on some time ago, and I was doing a machine knit item and it really wasn't working, so I unpicked it. So that's where that yarn has come from. And I have just added a bit of colour. I've got about three different skeins of hand-dyed yarn, which are a grey base, not all the same shade of grey, but a grey base then with pops of colour. And this one is by Truly Hooked. Don't remember the colourway name. I will, with yarns, I'll tell you what they are as they go along, but I'll give you all the full details when the item is finished. And I've just added that in. So my plan is to have grey, grey and colour, grey, grey and colour, and so on. So sort of wide stripes, but all within the grey family. So that's where we are with that at the moment. Although I was following the pattern closely and I had those stitch markers in between each section, I still found that my overall stitch count didn't match what it should have had on the pattern when I reached a point that says you should have X number of stitches. So I went back and I compared my work to the graphs and I still couldn't see the difference. What I sometimes do with these, and I do it with knitting things as well, is I'll go along and work out where the problem is and I'll just put a little stitch marker in. If I'm not going to unpick it, that is. If I'm feeling righteous, I'll unpick it. If I'm feeling like I normally do, I think, no, I'll adjust that as I go along. So if I should have, 50 stitches in a block and I've got 49, I'll put a marker in somewhere and that's a sign to me that I need to increase a stitch. If I've got 51 when I should have 50, I'll put the marker holding 2 stitches together so I know that I've got to decrease those to get the number right on the next round. Laziness / inventiveness, you choose. Yeah, so I still didn't have the right number of stitches, but when I checked my stitches against the charts, they were correct. So I decided to just keep going with it. And by having those stitch markers between each division of the blocks, I could keep a check on what was happening. So that's that one at the moment. You'll see later stages of it as we go along. I'm not intending to do a lot of variation to the pattern, but obviously if I will, you'll see about it. I'm now on the second section of instructions, so I can take these plastic stitch markers off. I'm using metal ones at the moment. I just use them for myself to differentiate between one set of instructions and the next. And may do the same again. You know, when I go on to the next set of instruction, if it helps to then differentiate by putting the plastic ones back on, I will. But this is this pattern. What I've also done is put progress keepers on to show where the divisions for the seams are. It's not really a raglan type of design, although I suppose it is. But where I've got these progress keepers rather than the light bulb or the plastic stitch markers, these two show a sleeve, whereas round to the next one shows body. So it just helped me to get a sense of the geography of the garment, if you like. And the two stitch markers I've got with the wooden decorations hanging from them, that's my centre front and centre back stitch. So again, it just helps me to keep a sense of what's where. If I just put it down for a couple of days again and pick it up, and I've got all these things noted, you know, wooden stitch markers equals centre back, centre front. I can just look at it and very quickly work out where I am, where I need to go next, rather than have the complete confusion that I had the other day thinking, I didn't think it was that complicated, why have I put all these stitch markers on? So that's that. You'll see that as it progresses. Don't know how long it will take me, depends how long I work on that and how long I work on other things. But hopefully the steps I've put in place at this stage will mean that it's a fairly smooth make as I go along. Cheers. Hello lovelies. So I left my tripod upstairs and I'm too lazy to go and get it, so I'm on a very precarious configuration here, so it's all kind of suddenly goes wrong. Apologies. I'll try not to kick the table because everything will go wrong. I've done some more work on the Flora Viola sweater, the crochet one, the drops pattern, and nothing has made me like the pattern any more than I did. I was saying earlier that it was definitely not a pattern for beginners. I'm wondering if it's a pattern for experienced crocheters, because I consider myself an experienced crocheter. I've been crocheting a long time. I've made patterns before. I've designed patterns before. I've made clothing. So it's not my first attempt at something that's not a simple piece. But just the way this thing is put together, you're left to work a lot out for yourself, which I don't mind, but then you always have that doubt, am I working it out correctly? Am I working it out the way the designer intended? Just a few more words of instruction here and there would go an awfully long way. So assuming I'm somewhere in the right ballpark where I should be with this sweater, I've now done this much. So my next step is to split for the sleeves. So, yes, there's a lot of fudging going on, more fudge than a confectionery shop, to be honest, because it says, oh, you should have approximately this many stitches and you should be approximately this and approximately that. I don't like that in a pattern. I like a pattern to be in absolutes so that I can then make modifications, but I know what my baseline is and I know what to go back to if things don't work out with my mods. But this just feels very woolly and vague, and woolly not in a good way. Woolly, but woolly. But anyway, we are persevering, and I've used the first of the contrast colours, which is the Truly Hooked yarn, and I think I'm doing it right. But the fact that I'm this far down and I'm not sure worries me. Just one other thing I have changed slightly, or a very minor thing. The rows are double trebles, so that's trebles in US terminology, alternated with double crochet, single crochet in US terminology. And the nature of working crochet in the round is that it has a tendency to lean, and it requires a lot of fiddling to get it not to lean. It can be done, but it then requires a bit of fudging around where you join the into the round, where you join the end to the beginning. And an easy way to avoid this is to work one of the rounds the other way. So that's what I've been doing. So what you're seeing here as the right side is the double treble rounds are the double treble rounds. Sorry, very poor English. And then I turn the piece around and go in the other direction for the double crochet rounds. And that's easy to do with crochet. If you're doing it with knitting, you just end up basically working flat because you're not joining the rounds together. You join the rounds with knitting by working the next stitch of the first stitch of the next round, which is why it actually becomes a spiral rather than a series of rounds. With crochet, you work distinct and discrete rounds, which you then join. So it's easy to flip round and work the other way just to help keep the stitches in vertical alignment. I hope that makes sense, even to the non-crocheters. So yeah, I'm going to carry on, just about to split for the sleeves. We'll see how we go from here. I do still like it, but I don't think I'll be rushing to make another one, let's put it that way. Cheers. Okay, so we're on to the last section. I've got some spinning to show you, and this large skein was created from two, I'm not sure what they were because they weren't the usual sort of combed top, but they were very nice. They're from willow fibres, in the Stormy Sky colourway. It says approximately 100 grams, merino and silk. It doesn't say what the proportion is of merino and silk. I had two of these, so I just spun each one into a single and then put the two together as a two-ply. I have got 410 metres of yarn at approximately 18 wraps per inch, so it came out quite fine. And that was using my normal forward draft method, short forward draft. You'll get these terms from me now because I have been doing some Craftsy courses. I've signed up when they had a special offer, which I think they're still running, where you can sign up for a year for a very, very low price. And I signed up in October and then did nothing for several months. This is kind of how I work with these things. Those of you who saw last month's podcast and saw me with the tapestry weaving would know that that's what I do. I haven't left it till 3 days before the whole thing expires, before I've started reading the course, watching the courses this time. And I've watched a couple on spinning so far, and it tempted me to try a different method of spinning, because the short forward draft is what I normally do. I'm a largely self-taught spinner, and I kind of got the hang of that, practiced it a lot, got a little more consistent at it, and I just enjoy that process, so that's what I do. I don't spin with specific aims in mind for the yarn. I spin because I enjoy spinning. But I thought I would try a different method. So this is from one of the skeins that I got at the Fibre Festival that you saw the footage of earlier in the month. And this I spun from the fold. So just pulling, excuse me, sorry, earthquake. Pulling the braid, it wasn't a braid, it was just like an unbraided braid. I'd make that an wouldn't it? Just pulling it so you get one staple length, fold it over your finger and then spin from that. Now himself and I have the sense of humour of teenagers. In fact, even that's going a bit sophisticated. So I was watching this video, this tutorial, and I had headphones on. I was watching it in this room, himself was watching the TV. And I said, oh, put that on mute for a second, let me play this again. Because we found it very amusing that it told us that I had to have my tip pointing my orifice. So that's what I've done. And in fact, I don't say I'm going to go and do some spinning now. I say I'm going to point my tip at my orifice. I know it's childish, but I think the important thing to note here is I don't really care. So this was plied today, spun it over the last few days, plied today. So I'm letting it rest on the bobbin before I put it into a skein. As you can see, I have Move my head out of the way. It's quite uneven in places. I've done it as a 2-ply. After I'd spun the single, I just wound it into a yarn cake and then pulled the 2 ends and plied it that way. And this is a new technique to me, so unsurprisingly the thickness of my singles weren't terribly consistent. So that's why it's quite an uneven yarn, but it was an interesting process to do. Something I might do again if I want that sort of preparation, and we'll see how this goes for knitting up as well. So those are all of the whips and FOs, I think, so I'm going to carry on knitting while I chat. The rest of this will pretty much be health update, so obviously not everyone's here for that, and if you've seen all you want to see, I thank you for watching this far and look forward to hopefully having your company again next month. So thanks very much and take care and happy knitting. I mentioned earlier in the podcast when I showed you the socks, I think I mentioned that I'd made them in hospital. It was a bit of a stressful time. To give the background, you may remember back in November I had a kidney stone and went to hospital where I was treated by having a stent inserted. So the stone itself wasn't treated, but a stent was put in to keep everything flowing the way it should. And apologies if this is TMI. Those stents are meant to be replaced every 6 months. So the 6 months was coming up. I was getting the call back to get that looked at, and in the meantime an ultrasound had revealed, or a CT had revealed, that this stone wasn't in the kidney anymore. I must have passed it. Very strange conversation with the lovely man in urology who said, "Congratulations on passing the kidney stone." Congratulations. Thank you. I studied hard for it. I'd like to thank the academy, my parents. It's a weird choice of word, but anyway, I was duly congratulated. So they took the stent out because the stone wasn't there anymore, so it wasn't needed. And the procedure is that you have the stent taken out, and then a couple of days later an ultrasound, and then go to see the urology department where they'll look at the results of the ultrasound and just check everything is functioning as it should be. I got called for the ultrasound on the Saturday of the first bank holiday weekend. So I went and had the ultrasound, then went along to the hospital to speak to urology, someone in the urology department. It was all a bit chaotic. I mean, it was a weekend, it was a bank holiday weekend, so they're not at skeleton staff, but not quite as the same as you'd have on a, Wednesday morning. And this doctor was saying to me, "Well, why are you here?" Well, because I was asked to come here. This isn't how I choose to spend my time, and I don't want to waste your time. I'm just here because I was asked to be. They also did a blood test, and it revealed that my kidney function was low, lowest it had ever been, and it had been fairly low in the past. And when I have a blood test, I have the NHS app on my phone, so I can see the results. They come through on that. Great. Don't understand most of them, but I know which ones to look out for. And it showed the kidney function level, and I thought, well, that's a bit worrying. So I looked up on Google what is a bad level, and I was 1% above kidney failure. So I started getting a little anxious. And then the doctor said, "Oh, we may have to admit you to the hospital." I said, "I can't be admitted," because I was at the hospital. Heidi, the dog, was on her own at home 15 miles away, because I was expecting to be just a few hours. Himself was in the northwest of England. I'm in the southeast of England. He was away watching his nephew play golf. So I was getting a little bit concerned about the dog. Thankfully, my mate Mand, thank you Mandy, you're an absolute saver on this one, was able to come round and let the dog out in the garden and spend time with her and give her a cuddle and all those sorts of things. So thank you, Mand. But when they were saying we may have to admit you to the hospital, I was getting a little bit concerned because Mandy's got cats, so she can't just move in to look after my dog. don't know that my dog and her cats would get along. So by this point I'm on the phone to my sisters saying, can someone move into my house please? Because there was no way himself was going to get back in any sort of time. I'd forgotten that Bev was dog sitting for a friend, so it wasn't easy for her, but big sister Cindy was able to, and thankfully, bless her, drop everything, come down to my house, let herself in, look after the dog, take the dog for a walk, feed her, you know, all those things. Well, luckily, the next blood test I had showed that my kidney function had improved slightly, just by 1% or 2. But it was enough for the doctor, who was then on duty, to say, we're happy to let you go home today, but you need to come back in on Tuesday morning, Tuesday being the next working day because it was the bank holiday weekend. And depending on the results from the tests we do at that point, you may need to be admitted. So, understood. So I was able to come home, which was great, saw sister, which was lovely. They decided to go home because it wasn't sort of super late by the time I got home. So they were welcome to stay the night, but they decided to go home, which is fair enough. So I went back in on Tuesday morning. By this time, Heidi had gone to her holiday home. There's a lovely lady she stays with if we ever need her to be looked after, if we were away or anything like that. So she went to that particular auntie's, and I knew I then didn't have to worry about her, and she was safe, didn't have to think about her until himself came home. So on the Tuesday morning I go back to the hospital. Himself by this point was on his way back from the northwest, and they did keep me in. So I'm on the phone to himself saying, can you come home via the hospital and pick up the car keys and drive the car home please, thank you very much. Which he did. So I was then in hospital for the next few days because the first day there was no space in theatre. The next day, I can't remember why it wasn't possible to have anything done. Also, they were trying to get fluids into me and, you know, try and rebalance the things that were out of kilter in my system. So on the Thursday, I had the procedure. So I had a general anaesthetic, just a very short procedure because they put the stent in, which is normally done under a local anaesthetic, but they also wanted to do some investigation, camera job, that kind of thing. So they did all that on the Thursday, and it transpired that the kidneys, nothing that they could see wrong with the kidney, but the tube between the kidney and the bladder has a stricture, it has a restriction. And given that we know we have a tumour in that area that is pressing against the bladder, this is probably what's causing the problem, but the stent then reinforces that. But because these are stents, they're not like heart stents, they're a different structure. They need replacing every 6 months. So every 6 months I'm going to have to go and have the stent removed and replaced. This will probably be done under a local anaesthetic because they try not to give you a general unless they have to. So not something I'm looking forward to, but I don't look forward to the dentist, and I go to that every 6 months as well, so end of. So I came home on the Friday, most of a pair of socks knitted, and generally feeling more comfortable because the stent had been put in. So that was that little adventure. Then yesterday, as I record this, we went to see the oncologist, and this was following on from a CT scan that I had a couple of weeks ago, and this is the follow-up from the radiotherapy treatment that I had. And there is some good news and some not such good news. So the good news is the radiotherapy has reduced the size of the tumour that it was treating, so that is good news. The not so good news is that I have some other what look like tumours in a similar area. Oh joy. So that's not so great. So it's a question of here we go again. Obviously, treatment options discussed, best courses of action discussed, and given that I've had so much treatment in the last 6 months or so with the chemotherapy and then the radiotherapy, unless I start to get a lot of pain, discomfort and problems because of these new little friends, If they start to give me any problem, then I'll make a phone call and things will start progressing more quickly. But otherwise, the plan is to give my body a chance to recover from the treatments that I've been having, because these treatments are great, but they do take their toll. And I'll have a scan in 3 months' time and then see the oncologist, and then we'll see what the best course of action is at that point. There is the possibility of a different chemotherapy treatment. My concern was, given the problems I've been having with the kidneys, that chemotherapy was now off the table because of the impact it was having. But this one that's being discussed kind of filters through the liver rather than the kidneys. So the thought process is that it shouldn't have any negative impact on an area that's already not its best. So that should make it a viable possibility. Is that a good sentence? You know what I mean. So very disappointing news, because not that the tumour had reduced, because we knew that, but the fact that it's got new ones is very disappointing and quite upsetting. And it was quite difficult for lots of reasons. In terms of treatment options, I'm happy with what's been discussed. I know that there are lots of different treatments out there, and you know, those of you who have experience with this might be thinking, what about this type of treatment? Yeah, I understand, but this is the route that is being discussed as best for me. So I'm happy with that. End of, as far as I'm concerned, with that one. And just got to get better, or as well as I can, to get my strength up for the next round of treatment. On the plus side, this other form of chemotherapy may cause thinning hair, but not hair loss. The ironic thing was, well, it seemed ironic, was that I had washed all my hats that I'd made and some of the ones I'd been given, and I was going to go through them and donate some to the unit where I'd had the chemotherapy previously, because I have a box of them for patients to take away with them. I might keep hold of them for a few months in case I need them, because if the hair thins I might get cold again. So that will be that. So yes, a bit disappointing, bit difficult, because hoping we were coming towards the end of something and we're a long way from that. But still here, still talking treatments. So hope is not lost, just dented a bit. And in the meantime, doing a lot of knitting and crochet. Oh dear, how sad, never mind. So that's the health update. Sorry it's not better news, but still here to be stupid, so we'll carry on with that. And I hope that you're all well. I know some of you are going through difficult times, or you have people close to you who are going through health problems, so my thoughts are with you, my hopes are with you, and I hope that you can find happy times even when things are looking a bit bleak, and that you can find enjoyable things to do that suit how you're feeling at the moment. I think I've waffled on enough, so thank you all very much. I will see you at the end of June, where no doubt Sister Bev will insist on being on the podcast again. I can't stop her. And have a good month, everyone. Thanks for being here. Take care. Hope you have time to do the things that bring you joy and that you're keeping well. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.